With Windows 10 ending its update support soon, and Windows 11 being filled with features I don't want, I made the grand decision to give Linux a try, but I didn't want to go all in straight away. So I decided to install Linux on a Dell Inspiron that I just had lying around, to see how painless or painful the process is. So sit back, relax, and I'll show you how I installed Linux on a Dell Inspiron from 2014. This Dell Inspiron is equipped with a 4th gen Intel i5 processor, which can run at about 3.4 GHz, and apparently has 2 GB of video memory on it as well. It is also equipped with 8 GB of DDR3 RAM, a snazzy DVD player, a broken front plate that hides the USBs, and a mystery GPU. That's the hardware. Let's take a look at the software. The version of Linux I decided to go with was Linux Mint. Now before you leave a comment saying you should have gone with Arch, you should have gone with whatever, I just went with Linux Mint because I heard it was user friendly for beginners. Finding the ISO files was pretty easy. I just searched up Linux Mint. I got to the page and clicked download and it asked me what version I wanted. I decided to go with Cinnamon, only because it was the first option there. Then it brought me to a page where a bunch of people were hosting the ISO files. And I'm not gonna lie, this kinda scared me. Especially seeming that you had to authenticate the files yourself to make sure you weren't getting scammed. So I just decided to send it, and scrolled through the list and found the Aussie ones. Did a quick Google search on AARnet and they seemed legit. So started downloading away at peak Aussie internet speeds. So after 9 hours and disconnecting everything off the Wi-Fi, I now had the ISO files, but I couldn't just put them on a USB. I had to download a program to flash the USB. So I went with Balena Etcher, mainly because a mate suggested it to me. The process was really straightforward. You just click the ISO file, pick the USB you want to flash, and then it flashes it. And in less than 20 minutes, the USB had Linux Mint on it and ready to install. So I shoved that thing into the Dell Inspiron. Then I got really confused because unlike Windows, when you boot it off the USB, it starts the installation process like immediately. It actually booted Linux Mint. So while I was in Linux Mint, I had to install Linux Mint. The actual installation of Linux was really easy. It asks you for keyboard layout, Wi-Fi, and to set up a secure password. Something cool about the installation is that it asked me if I would like to keep the other OS that I had on the hard drive, which was Windows XP. Which I thought was really cool because it allows you to set up a dual boot system really easily. Also, when it was done installing, it asked me if I would like to restart my computer now or continue testing things. Which is a very stark difference between Linux and Windows, because Windows requires you to restart your computer when they want. And I thought it was really cool that Linux just gave you the option to restart when you want. After restarting, I was given a welcome guide, and the first bit of software I was introduced to was desktop colors. Which I appreciate because there's nothing worse than booting up a software and getting flashbanged by it. The second thing I was introduced to was system snapshots, which I'm pretty sure is just a way to go back to a previous version in case you brick your current one. Next up was driver manager, and all my drivers were up to date apparently, so that was good. The next program I used was software manager, which is like the App Store equivalent but for PC. I used it to install some essential software like VLC player, Steam, and a handful of other things. And yep, I was done. I successfully installed Linux on a Dell Inspiron from 2014. Now let's see how gaming works on it. Now you remember that fancy little optical drive that's in the front of this computer? I wanted to see if I could use it to install Sims 1 Deluxe Edition. Now the first roadblock I ran into, it's a game designed to run on Windows. So I need to download a tool called Wine to get the installer to run in the first place. And yep, the installation process began. And then I ran into the issue of putting disk 2 in. And I couldn't get Sims to recognize that I put the disk in the disk player. So I downloaded another program called Lutris to see if I could get to run through that. And I still couldn't get it to work, so I gave up on it for the time being. The next game I gave a shot was Minecraft, which I was just able to download from the Minecraft website and install. The only version of Minecraft that seems to work under Linux is Java Edition, which I'm not too upset about because I don't play Bedrock. So I set all the graphic options to minimum and launched into the game. And I was getting an FPS range anywhere between 13 and 17 FPS, so that's pretty grim. It's not completely unplayable, but it wouldn't be a very pleasant experience for me to sit down and play Minecraft like this. Yeah, things aren't looking too good about using this as any sort of gaming computer if it can't even run Minecraft. Because of Steam's compatibility options, you can just download any Steam game and just play it under Proton. So I booted up TF2 and was having similar results at running about 14 FPS, and when I tried to get into a match, it would crash. And I'm pretty sure this isn't a Linux issue, it might just be a hardware issue on my end. I booted up Risk of Rain with low expectations, and I was correct, it ran at 2 FPS on the loading screen. So I didn't even bother trying to launch it into a game. It was struggling really hard with any 3D game I threw at it, so I decided to throw some 2D games at it. So I booted up Undertale. And it ran beautifully. No stutters, no frame dips. It just ran like Undertale runs. Which if it didn't run Undertale, there was very, very low hopes for this computer being useful for anything. I also gave Doki Doki a try, and it ran okay. There was some stuttering and frame dips, but for the most part it ran fine. I got really concerned that this PC wouldn't be able to run anything, so I did a double check on the specs of it, and yeah, that's not good. So that mystery graphics card that was in it is an Nvidia GeForce GT 705. And yeah, this card is absolute cheeks. It only has 1GB of VRAM. The CPU on this computer has 2GB of VRAM, so I got that GPU and tossed it out of there, and gave gaming another go. And Minecraft is now playable. It's running at 60 FPS on really low settings, and I could get it to run at 30 FPS on okay-ish settings. But I ran into a new issue. None of the games that I had downloaded on Steam were working. So I did a bit of research, and since my CPU's integrated graphics are so old, I need to lower the version of Proton I was using. So instead of using Proton 9, I need to go to Proton 6 to 7. And yeah, everything was running beautifully. I even got games that wouldn't even launch on the other graphic card to launch and run pretty okay on this one. Like Batman Arkham City and Batman Arkham Asylum, which on default settings ran between 20 to 30 FPS, and with a bit of tweaking I reckon I could get it to run at 30 stable. Risk of Rain was now running at a crisp 14 FPS, on the lowest settings possible, which isn't really playable, but it does work. I even gave a Source 2 game a try, Dota Underlords, which was running about 30 FPS, which is completely playable on an auto chess game. If you're wondering why I didn't give CS2 a try, it's mainly because it's like a 50GB download, and my Wi-Fi is kind of doo-doo cheeks. So to wrap it up, my experience with Linux was kind of a weird one, I guess. I think that really boils down to me installing it on a Dell Inspiron from 2014. If I had installed this on more modern hardware, I think I would have had a more streamlined experience with it. But even then, I'm pretty sure some issues would still persist, mainly the ones getting Windows applications to run on Linux. And because I have a lot of physical media for PC, getting them to work on Linux was a pain, so I gave up pretty quickly in trying to do any of that. But in saying that, there are applications like Wine and Proton which constantly get updates, and do a great job getting Windows applications to run on Linux. You can also use tools like Lutris to even further streamline the process. What I'm probably going to do when Windows 10 inevitably becomes obsolete and unusable, I'll probably end up using a dual boot system, where the majority of my time will be spent on Linux, but for the more niche issues that I can't fix with Linux, I'll move over to Windows to play those games and do that type of stuff. And I highly recommend you give the Penguin a go. And a good way to start is probably what I did, just dusting off an old PC and installing Linux onto it. But anyway, thanks for watching, catch you in the next video.